So right now, as you listen to this, a drone built in California trained on AI is flying over conflict zone. The minerals sparring that drone, they came from the DRC, the cobalt in the battery, the coltan in the circuit board, dug by hand by someone who will never see a dollar from Palantir's $30 billion counterpart. My name is Ruben. This is the Tech Experience Podcast, and today we are going to talk about the most important AI story. Nobody's Africa is discussing AI in war and what it means for us. Ask yourself something. When was the last time you had an African podcast breakdown? What Androl is, what Palantir does, how much money the US Pentagon is spending on AI weapons right now? Probably never, and that is exactly the problem. Because whether we talk about it or not, this technology is being built with African resources deployed in global conflicts and regulated by governments that have never once asked Africans what they think. That ends today. A moment of silence. We've got 5 segments today. Each one answers a question. The first, what is the US actually building with the AI military money? The second, where does Africa sit in the system? The third, what happens to a country's minerals with the power weapons you will never control? The fourth, what are African governments doing or not doing? And the fifth, what should you, the person listening to this, actually think and do about all of this? So let's go. So let me give you some numbers. The United States Pentagon budget for the fiscal year, that's the financial year 2026, is $1.01 trillion. 1 trillion, and inside that budget, for the very first time in history, it is a dedicated budget line for AI and autonomous system. 13 billion, $4 billion just for AI, just for 1 year. To help you understand that number, NASA's entire annual budget is above $25 billion. The US military is spending more than half of what it costs to run the entire US space agency on AI weapons. In a single year, they have already asked for 1.5 trillion for the next year, a 42% increase, the largest military budget in modern history ever to be recorded. Here's where it gets more even interesting. Federal AI contracts potential value, meaning ceiling on what the government can spend on AI deals, rose by 1,605% between 2025 and 2026. That's not a typo. 1,605%. And of that spending, 98.9% goes to the Department of Defense, aka the Department of War. Not health, not education, not infrastructure. The defense. AI is being weaponized, and that is not a metaphor. So who is actually building these AI systems? Let me introduce you to 2 companies. You probably have not heard of them, but you are paying attention to global power in 2026. You should have them memorized. The first is Palantir. So Palantir, named by the way after a magical stone from the Lord of the Rings, aka Hobbit, which tells you everything you need to know about the people who run it. It's a software company valued at $365 billion. It was founded by Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley billionaire, and Alex Karp, who has written a book literally arguing what Western nations need AI hard power to maintain dominance. Their software called Gotham and AIP takes satellite feeds, drone footage, human intelligence, signal data, and refuses all into one single operation picture. So instead of a general looking at 12 different screens, Palantir gives them one screen with actionable coordinate, point to strike here under 20 seconds. Palantir's contract with the US Army is worth $10 billion. It has worked with the Israeli Ministry of Defense, Ukrainian military, and US immigration agencies, where it was used to identify and detain families for deportation. In March 2026, protesters gathered outside their headquarters in Florida. Critics are calling their philosophy, and I am going to quote here, techno-fascism. Palantir's own stock has surged 17% in 1 month as US-Iran military tensions escalated. Their business model is war. Where is war they benefit? The second company is Anduril, who also named after a Lord of the Rings sword. I promised I'm not making this up. Founded by the Palmer Luckey, who previously built Oculus VR headset and sold it to Facebook for $2 billion. Luckey decided his next ventures will be autonomous weapons, drones, autonomous fighter jets, counter drone systems, underwater vehicles, and an AI system platform called Lattice that fuses all of these systems into Battlefield network, the same as Palantir's own AIP and Gotham. the March 2026, the US Army signed annual a 10-year contract up to $20 billion, not 20 million, $20 billion. It consolidates over 120 separate procurement actions into a single enterprise deal. The quote I want you here to hear from the US Army's own announcement. Quote, and I quote, "The model battlefield is increasingly defined by software, not soldiers, not tanks. Software, AI." So, and in February 2026, Android demonstrated something that generalists and military experts. Their YFQ 44A drone successfully switched to between two completely different AI systems mid-flight. Imagine that, mid-flight. The drone made a decision in the air without a human, no human in the loop. So think what it means: a machine flying at speed, making a terrible targeting decision without a human confirming it, and the US military call it success. We will come back to this, but first, let us talk about where Africa sits in all of this. So now let's zoom out. The entire continent of Africa, 54 countries, 1.5 billion people, spends roughly $2 to $3 billion on AI across all sectors combined: health, agriculture, education, finance, everything, name it. 2 to 3 billion. The US military alone is spending 13.4 billion on AI weapons. The Pentagon spends more on AI in 1 year than Africa has invested in AI across its entire history. Africa accounts for just 1 to 1.5% of global AI spending. Yet we have the world's largest youth population, the fastest growing pool of software developers, and critically, we sit on the top of minerals that make all of this AI possible. That is a paradox. At the heart of this episode, the foundation of the AI economy is African. The profits is not. Why? Let me be specific about what I mean. The DRC of Congo, the DRC supplies roughly 17% of the world's cobalt. What is essential? It goes into lithium-ion batteries, stable as GPUs, chips. It goes into the uninterruptible power supplies that keep AI data centers running. Without cobalt, there's no Palantir, there's no Unreal, there's no ChatGPT, there's no cloud. 70% of the cobalt comes from one African country, DRC Congo. Alongside cobalt, Africa provides coltan, which is refined into tantalum for circuit boards, and capacitors, copper, which carries electricity through every data center and every weapon system. Major lithium reserves, Tanzania and Madagascar have graphite. South Africa has lithium. South Africa has platinum, has gold. The AI boom is at its foundation and African resource history. And yet, as one report put it, and I quote, "The digital revolution rides on African soil. The DRC supplies the cobalt, but Congolese people see almost none of the value created downstream. Supply chains runs through complex networks of intermediaries. Report documents child labor and safe conditions and disposition. And the same companies taking these minerals are the ones signing $30 billion contracts with the Pentagon, not DRC Congo. Why? This is a phrase people are using to describe this dynamic digital colonialism 2.0. In the first colonialism, Europe took land and minerals and labor. In digital colonialism 2.0, the extraction continues, but the raw minerals has expanded. It's still the minerals, but now it's also data. Every time an African user opens an app, such as on Google, uses a fintech product, watches a video, that data is harvested, it trains AI models, it generates value, but it flows back to the shareholders in San Francisco and London, not Africa. So, as a cybersecurity expert in Abuja put it this way: millions of African citizens unknowingly fuel massive foreign AI models. They use seemingly free digital services that secretly harvest valuable metadata. These models generate incredible wealth for shareholders located thousands of miles away. Physical extraction migrated to digital extraction. The logic did not change, only the resources did. Is there a meaningful difference between a colonial farm mining your copper in 1900 and a tech company mining your data in 2026? So what are African governments actually doing about all of this? Let me start with Kenya. So because as a Kenyan podcast, we should own this conversation. Kenya has a draft national AI strategy for 2025 to 2030. The government hosted the AI Everything Kenya GTEx Kenya 2026 in KICC. So East Africa largest AI showcase, 280 enterprises, 100 investors representing $50 billion in assets under management, 75 countries. President Ruto has spoken about Kenya becoming an AI hub for the continent. There was a $1 billion deal brokered during the Biden administration between Microsoft, UAE-based G42, and Kenya to build a geothermal power data center in Great Rift Valley. What meant to make Kenya an anchor for the East Africa AI? And by the way, the deal was cancelled because Kenya could not sustain the power constraints that comes with that data center. So it was suspended. So that's what that does that tell you. Africa is not prepared yet. So here's the problem. As mid of 2025, the data center had not been breaking ground, and Kenya new AI bill critics say it's largely a copy of the UA of the European Union AI Act. Europe's regulation designed for European systems, European companies, European legal structures applied on African country. As one analyst put it, Africa has legislating foreign systems, not its own, and without an African built foundation, sovereignty becomes a press release. Let that sink in. Across the continent, the picture is mixed. Africa promised $60 billion to build its own AI. That pledge was made at major summits with significant fanfare, but many of the signatory countries are under severe physical strain. Public debt averaging 66% of GDP, several of those same governments promising AI billions are cutting health and education budgets under pressure from lenders. Here's what is happening. Instead of sovereign AI, Cassava Technologies partner with NVIDIA's to build GPU-powered data centers. Hardware is designed to plug Africa into American-dominated cloud ecosystem. China, through the digital Silk Road, has moved faster and more cheaply. The question African leaders have not answered is this: you can let someone else build the road, but you should not let them decide where it goes. And critically, Africa holds leverage that is not using. New American research put it plainly. Africa holds leverage at base of AI stack in cobalt mines, cable landing stations, and energy capacity for data centers. Whether that leverage translates into influence depends on condition happening before decisions are made elsewhere. If African governments fail to coordinate now on mineral pricing mechanisms and enforceably regional standards, Washington and Beijing will negotiate terms that render African leverage irrelevant. There's one more thing I want to highlight because it happened very recently, very close to home. Kenya Ministry of Defense hosted a summit on AI, Peace for Security in April 2026. The summit called for strong investments, local innovation ecosystem, and explored AI's roles in the counter-terrorism, drone operations, and early warning system for conflict prevention. They emphasized, and this is a direct quote from the ministry, that sustainable peace will increasingly depend on technologies designed with African realities in mind. African problems need African solutions. That is a powerful statement. African designed African realities, not Palantir, not Unreal, not system built in California for California geopolitical interests. The question is that they flow that they does the question is, does the follow through match the statement? Because right now the gap between what African governments is about AI sovereignty and what they actually fund is enormous. Can any African country build its own AI defense system the next decade? And if not, whose system will it choose? I want to be honest with you for a moment. This is not a simple story. I am not here to tell you that Palantir is evil, Africa is the innocent victim. Life's not clean. There are African governments that will use Palantir's great surveillance AI to monitor their own citizens. Tomorrow, if they could afford it, there are African tech companies profiting from data extraction just like Western ones. The problem is systemic, not just results of bad actors on one side. I want to tell you this. What I am saying is this: the rules of the AI economy are being written right now. The contracts are being signed, the infrastructure is being built, the regulations are being drafted, and Africa is largely absent from these conversations. Not because we lack intelligence, not because we lack ideas, not because we lack the capital, the infrastructure, and the political coordination to demand a seat at the table of our own times. And the clock is ticking, because once these roads are built, once the infrastructure is in place, once the AI systems are embedded, it will be extremely hard to renegotiate who owns them. So, is there any meaningful difference between African minerals powering colonial railways in 1900 and African minerals powering AI weapons systems in 2026? Should African nations place export bans on cobalt and rare other minerals until the companies buying them guarantee African AI investment in return? The US military spent $90 billion on AI contracts in 2026. Kenya's entire annual AI investment is barely measurable. At what point does the gap between a security threat to Africa? If a Palantir style AI surveillance system was offered to Kenya's government for free, do you think they should take it? What should you trade for it? Can Africa build a sovereign AI? One trend on African language, African data, African context within the next 10 years? What will it take? So let me leave you with this. Africa has been here before. We had rubber, they built tires. We had cotton, they built textiles. We had gold, they built currencies. Now we have cobalt, they are building artificial intelligence. We have data, they are building large language models. We have young engineers and they are offering them jobs in their data centers on their own terms. The difference these times, and I believe this genuinely, is the technology era moves faster than any previous resource era. The window to build our own AI stack, to coordinate mineral pricing, to demand that data generated by African research benefits African economies. The window is open right now, but it will not stay open forever. African Development Bank projects that AI could add $1 trillion to African GDP by 2035. 1 trillion. If we build it ourselves, if we negotiate the terms, if we train our engineers, build our data centers, protect our data, stop allowing minerals to be priced by people who have never set foot on African soil. Here's what I want you to do this week. First, share this episode, send it to one person in your network who makes decisions about technology, a policymaker, a developer, a student, a business owner. This conversation needs to be louder. Second, look up two things. Look up what Palantir is, look up what Coltan is, and ask yourself, what is the connection? That follow the Tech Experiment podcast, because here is where we explain tech at your own understanding. So my name is Ruben. This is the Tech Experience Podcast under the Liquid Creatives. We are out of Nairobi. We are telling the stories that matter for Africa, and we are just getting started. So peace. See you on the next episode.